This podcast is brought to you by Flipper, a marketplace to buy and sell websites, stores, and digital real estate. Plot your own path. Become a boss by buying a small online business at Flipper. Simply visit flipper.com/techtalks for a free consultation and 50% off fees. That's FLIPPA, flipper.com/techtalks. If you do visit, let me know how you get on. But now, let's get the show started.
Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, I think one thing we can all agree on is, as a user, or even if we're working inside a business, now more than ever, software needs to work perfectly. And to make that a reality, businesses must monitor, optimize, and scale every application in any cloud. That is the challenge. In fact, a business should know about a problem before a single support ticket is raised or anybody knows that the problem exists. And as we all know, that is seldom the case for many businesses out there. So as consumers rely on digital services throughout the pandemic and beyond, businesses saw a huge increase in site traffic that actually ended up causing performance degradations and other technical challenges. In fact, insights from a company called Dynatrace found increases across industries in key website performance metrics. So to help manage these unpredictable changes in demand, organisations in retail and the government sectors specifically began turning to automation and AI assistance to deliver essential business outcomes both efficiently and cost effectively. So in today's episode, I want to learn more about the increases across industries in key website performance metrics and how unpredictable changes in demand are driving businesses to turn to automation and AI assistance, and what that means for everyone. So buckle up and hold on tight, because I want to beam your ears all the way to Austria today, where I'm going to introduce you to today's very special guest. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and indeed a little bit more about your role at Dynatrace?
Yeah, my name is Alois Weisbauer. I'm the Chief Technical Strategist here at Dynatrace. This means I'm responsible for a lot of the technology innovation we bring to the market, new developments, new approaches. I'm also leading our research department, and I'm also responsible for open source projects here at Dynatrace. Currently, my biggest focus area is really building applications following what we at Dynatrace call a no-ops principle, more or less automating all the historically manual and sometimes tedious tasks of delivering and running software and trying to give people back more time they need for more interesting things.
And I'm glad to get you on the podcast today, because I was at Dynatrace Perform in Vegas way back in February. And let's face facts here. I mean, traveling to an event on the other side of the world and talking to people on a show floor now feels like a completely alien experience. And that just feels like a different world looking back. But what have been your biggest challenges adjusting to these changes over the last few months?
I think for us, per se, at Dynatrace, we always were a highly distributed team and working in the IT industry and also having like a distributed development team. Using technology per se was not so much of a challenge, and we had our systems set up in a way that they were working fine. I think what still was obviously a challenge, and that what people sometimes forget, obviously, when they talk about work from home, or meet from home, as I sometimes like to call it, because obviously you also have a lot of meetings when you're from home, is time zone differences. I think people don't talk about this a lot, but for me, I used to travel to the US like 1 to 2 weeks a month. And now I'm not traveling, I'm still interacting virtually with people, but the time zone differences are still there. From an IT systems perspective, I'd say that a lot of things actually really worked fine for us here at Dynatrace. But when it came to your private life, you could obviously see that services obviously are way more stressed out, and you were way more relying on online services than you used to do before.
And one of the other big changes that I've seen, of course, is consumers are now relying on digital services during the pandemic, and businesses as a result are seeing huge increases in site traffic that are then going on to cause performance degradations and other technical challenges. I mean, is there any insights you can share around that and what's been happening over the last few months?
Yeah, one thing we generally saw is traditionally when people were coming to work, the IT departments were ensuring that you have proper infrastructure inside your company's premises. So we had a great network within the company. They ensured that everything was working fine. But now as people moved to work from home, while they could access these systems, there was an additional variable added to that, which is the network that somebody had at home. And we indeed had this conversation with the customer is that our biggest challenge right now is understanding the connectivity of our employees from home that were sometimes, especially in the US, like 1.5, like 2 hours away from where the offices are, and what the impact of this distribution was. That's one thing we saw. Another thing we saw is that especially industries that were not used to this like massive traffic had some challenges coping with it. We had some customers in the government space, and like with all that, these government-funded programs, all this information that needs to be available to people. Traffic spikes were massive and highly unpredictable. I remember one customer telling us that they saw the traffic they usually see across the entire year in one single day, and you can't blame them for being massively challenged by this, simply because you would never expect this and you would never engineer a system for this because you didn't need to do this. And another interesting finding was that people were also switching more to mobile services. So mobile is becoming more important. So for certain services, we saw people really moving from the desktop more towards mobile applications.
And I'm curious, are you seeing any changes in approaches? And by that, I mean, traditionally we see things put in a build phase and then put into test scenarios. But are you noticing a more resiliency approach? And are businesses waking up to that desire that we all need a more resilient approach, especially towards applications?
Definitely. So traditionally, what we try to do with applications and with infrastructure, we try to build them as good as possible so that they never fail and that we prepare for the situations that we're expecting. Now we learn two things. We cannot control the whole infrastructure anymore. That kind of like started with the whole movement to the public cloud, where we had to be fine with the server suddenly being down and the infrastructure recovering and being resilient to these kind of things. It's not this server will be there forever. It's moved to this server can be gone in couple of minutes and your infrastructure need to cope with it. We also now see this in the application space. We cannot no longer predict what's going to happen tomorrow, or we couldn't do it for a while. I think now we're in a bit more of a stable situation. So the whole idea is really moving from like this highly stable, highly tested systems to way more resiliency, meaning you are able to cover with the situation at hand, and we have to deal with the situation as it occurs. And that's the major change. Can we build systems that can cope with new and unpredictable situations? Also, on top of this, innovations are rolled out quicker. If you find a problem, you're not going to test it for a very long time. Your business opportunity might be rather short, so you have to go out with an application that might not be perfect and just learn as you go and not have like these traditionally long testing phases. This is something we definitely see people investing time into, how they can automate, how they can ensure that if a new release goes into production, a new feature goes into production that might not work perfectly, how they can build resilience in the system that people can still use it.
Fantastic. And also to help manage all these unpredictable changes in demand, we've also seen organizations, especially in retail and government sectors, specifically turning to automation and AI assistance to deliver essential business outcomes, both efficiently and cost effectively. So do you have any use cases or examples just to help bring that topic to life for people listening?
Obviously, as we have more of these unpredictable changes, it's harder to prepare for them, obviously.
Yeah.
what people have to do, they have to still react very quickly, because usually when there is a spike in traffic, there's a very good reason. And this very good reason might be if you're a government organization, that people need access to vital information or to vital services. If you're in the e-commerce space, this might just be the business opportunity that you have been waiting for a long time. And then you have to resolve problems. And people now, especially in this whole problem resolution phase, they're now confronted with a much bigger challenge. So usually they brought everybody together in a room, and then they let people figure out what's going on there. Obviously, today, this is no longer working because you can't bring people in a room, or you shouldn't do it. So what automation can do here is a couple of things. First of all, it can help you already during the software delivery to compare existing releases to previous releases, find any changes automatically, and proactively tell people about issues that they might be having. And on the operations side, a lot of work on the operations side, especially when you run into problems, is really data analysis. Finding anomalies, see whether anomalies are related to each other, identifying causality, which means which service is impacting which other services, pretty much what humans used to do. It's just a lot of number crunching that you have to do, a lot of data analysis that can be very well automated, because even as modern applications are very complex, the basic approach and how you find problems in there can be described pretty easily, and also can be automated really well. And that's where AI-based systems come in pretty handy. And when we talk about AI-based systems, this is not you just let the system learn and suddenly it magically figures out what the problem is. The way the systems work is really kind of teach them like the basic knowledge on how to analyze problems and how to find the root cause, the technical root cause of a problem. And then you feed them with real-world data and what a real-world environment looks like. And as problems occur, the system then is using this knowledge together with some data analytics on top of it to find out what the most likely technical root cause is. This is a process that can take humans hours or even days. But as we have all this compute power, looking at all of this data with software takes a couple of milliseconds or seconds, getting you very close or even to that point where you can automatically then even trigger remediation actions. So if you really had a new release in production or a certain feature is causing you an issue, that you can automatically take actions to remediate the situation.
And a stat that really stood out for me was, I think it was SAP CX, was seeing a 50% increase in page impressions on customer sites compared with peak times such as Black Friday. But can you expand on how it is using AI to automate operations and ensure proactive responses to issues? Because it feels like a real game changer.
So in the past, or usually you brought up Black Friday here, which is a good example. With Black Friday, you know exactly when it's going to happen. You also know when Cyber Monday is going to happen. So you have all your people on call. You tell them ahead of time, and they know ahead of time that something is coming their way. But during this recent times, it was much harder because you couldn't predict it. So the people you might need to analyze this data are simply not available. And situations also evolve very quickly. So when you look at a performance problem or an operational issue in software, out of a situation that you really were not prepared for, that you might have tested, this is not something static. It's not like the backend breaks and suddenly, and this is the only thing that breaks. It's usually like a domino effect. Like one component starts to fail, then another component starts to fail, and then you start to remediate one action, which might have another side effect. So this is actually very complex. These situations are very complex if you run large-scale applications. What an AI system now can do is it can really learn these dynamics and tell you what the impact is of all of those changes, and more or less guide you through this process of all the actions you take and the impact it has. Think of it almost like a GPS that you have in your car, guiding you along the way what the next turn should be along your problem remediation here.
And a few moments ago, we were talking about the the change towards a more resilient approach. And something else that really stands out for me is we seem to be adopting more of a reactive mindset, adopting from a reactive mindset where we wait for something to go wrong and then everyone runs around trying to fix it and fighting fires, to a much more proactive mindset. And just to bring that to life, another example I saw was, I think it was grocery retailer Kroger, that had also turned to the help of AI to proactively address site issues before customers were even impacted. But is that something you can expand on as well?
Yeah, so at Dynatrace, we look at issues usually at 3 different severity levels from a very high level perspective. There is pure infrastructure issues, which means only the infrastructure is affected, but none of the application components is affected. This might be a server going down, which in a cloud environment shouldn't be anything spectacular. So one server goes down, a new one comes up again, and it should take over the load and should handle the system properly. The second level of severity is that we then see that certain services might see some degradation, but not yet the end user. One example is you have maybe a recommendation service, and you're running out of capacity, and this recommendation service just gets too slow. People implement components that they call circuit breaker. What a circuit breaker more or less does, it sees the service is not available, so it's returning a standardized response instead of querying the service dynamically. This is like big e-commerce providers like Amazon, and also like companies like Netflix had this in production for quite a long time. Think about it this way. If you're on an e-commerce shop, it's nice to get a recommendation what else to shop for. But if you're not getting it, you still want to complete your shopping. And then the third level is seeing problems that obviously are affecting users. These are the most important ones. So number one is if you see a certain failure, immediately understanding, is this affecting any users? Because if it's not affecting any users, it's not super important. If it's not even affecting the application components because the application is already recovering based on some automation you built into it, it's not important as well because the system is taking care of it. So that's definitely a key point to understand this. And on top of this, at Dynatrace, we are closely working with our customers to also automate the incident response. Think of it that way. Traditionally, people wrote what they call run books, how to run software. These were wiki pages, like text, that you can read. And when an operator saw an issue, they were looking at the run book, what to do, and then taking these actions. We have taken a way more modern approach to this by encoding these remediation actions in code. So this is what we refer to as operations as code, which is, by the way, way more convenient for the developer to write a remediation action in code instead of writing a lengthy text of how it's supposed to work. So what we can now do, now we're combining everything we had in there. We had this technical root cause analysis that AI-based operations gives us, identifying a potential root cause. Now we can match it with a runbook, machine-level runbook description. Like in the case of a failure rate increase, you might want to disable a certain feature and build what we call a closed-loop automation where we detect the technical root cause, pick the proper action, later on automatically validate if it solved the problem. If it did, we never have to bother any human with this. We will let them know, but they don't have to take any actions. And only in the cases where this automation does not work or does not have the desired results, somebody needs to actively engage in this. Otherwise, the system can handle this automatically.
I've had countless emails from listeners over the last few weeks talking about their fears and concerns around job security, while also seeing their interest rates on their savings drop considerably. And as a result, many are beginning to look at how they can invest in their future in an uncertain time. Could digital assets be the answer? Now, you might remember that I spoke to Blake Hutchinson, CEO at Flipper, on episode 1194 about how to buy digital assets and websites. In a nutshell, Flipper is a marketplace that you can buy and sell websites, stores, and digital real estate that are just ready to go. So if you do have dreams of running your own successful online business, or perhaps you're looking to exit your existing online business, My friends at Flipper can help you buy and sell. So if you're interested and want to find out more, please visit flipper.com/tech talks. That's FLIPPA.com/tech talks for a free consultation and also 50% off all fees. But now, back to the interview. What I also find fascinating is, as an ex-IT guy, that still gets flashbacks of those days where you'd have a dashboard where all the alerts would suddenly go red, followed by hundreds of people jamming the support phone line and people running around with laptops in their hand, running into a server room, shouting P1 and all those kind of things. Are you noticing a huge shift from that old reactive approach to this much more proactive mindset now?
We do. And definitely the new work situation changed this, because you can't just all rush together. People are working distributed. People have to take care of their kids. So it might take somebody half an hour to an hour to reply. And you have to get the right people together. So this approach to automate more is only bring the right people together, but it's just figuring out what the most likely problem is and getting the right people in a Slack channel. But also telling other people, yes, your service that you're responsible for is failing, but we already detected that your service is not the reason, but it's one of the other backend services that you're consuming, which is causing your service to fail. That's also removing the stress. And eventually, as people start to build services that come with this like operations as code approach, they lend themselves way more to automation. And it also helps to remove the burden from the people, or also from the development organization that were like very often included in this conversation, and also massively from like a first and second level technical support, because they can't do anything about it anyways. If it was that simple to solve, it would already be part of the automation.
And what kind of conversations are you hearing from your customers as we come out of this lockdown period? Are there any trends from those conversations, and how are you helping them at Dynatrace?
I'd say that at Dynatrace we are very lucky, because we have very innovative and forward-looking customers, some of those who you mentioned. And many of them saw this now as the big opportunity to really drive modernization, drive automation forward even more than they did in the past. Say, well, now we really have to go all in on automation. Now we really have to change our models even more as we had to do in the past. And then you don't want to move back. So once you move towards more automation, towards a more distributed mindset, involving people only when it's really necessary, then there's no reason to really go back to where you were before. And then people also see these additional opportunities. And once they get their feet wet, they want to see, okay, how much further can we take this? So how much more can we automate? How much more can we have people work on value-adding tasks versus repeatable tasks that they might have still accepted in the past? Like somebody is working on a repeatable task. It's not ideal, but we'll tackle it at some point in time. This now definitely changed. I remember one customer, as they were also pushing more towards innovation and shipping new services, their request was, help me to get my people back. And what he meant is, help me move them on tasks that help us as a company to evolve in the current times, versus the people spending their time on keeping the lights on. That is definitely a massive ask from customers, and where they're also moving their investments towards.
That's so refreshing to hear that. It really is. And looking towards the future, what's next for Dynatrace? I appreciate it's probably not too much you can share at the moment, but is there anything you can?
It's a very open secret that Dynatrace traditionally was in the APM and monitoring space. That's where we invested most of our efforts, which now transitioned then into the AI and analytics space. So data collection for monitoring we see as a solved problem. It's still challenging as systems are getting bigger, but that analytics is really where the challenges were, as we spoke about before, about AI-based analytics. And the next step for us is clearly automation, to really close that loop from getting the data, figuring out what's going on, and then taking the right action. So automation is definitely key where we want to support our customers to reach that higher level of automation. We have established an entire program for our customers to help them move in that direction faster, and also guarantee that they're successful along the way by building up a dedicated services team just addressing these topics with our customers and working with them. On the one hand, ensuring like this short-term wins so that they can free up resources to work on more strategic topics. And then also setting up a roadmap for more strategic implementations towards automation and really moving people in this value creation part versus the keeping the lights on part. And that's definitely where we see more and more of our investments. And you mentioned our conference Perform before. The very interesting shift that I saw this year, and obviously I have been going to Perform for quite a couple of years, is this year it was still a lot about technology, but not so much. This is how we use Dynatrace. This is how we use this feature. This is how we use this capability. The conversations really started to move more in a direction. This is how it changed the way we work. This is how we evolved as an organization. This is how my job changed. This is how the responsibilities of my team changed. This is how we as an organization deliver applications in general. And this is really where we want to support our customers to not just be a tool that, as you mentioned before, shows data on a dashboard, where we have moved beyond that obviously a couple of years ago, but really to a point where eventually, like the big vision at some point is you deploy your code together with your instructions on how to run it, and then you have a platform that can pretty much do this for you, not just at the infrastructure level, but also at the application and domain specific level.
I completely agree with you there. And it has taken me 3 to 4 months just to get Dave Anderson's version of Full Stack Baby, the Vanilla Ice cover there, out of my head. It was fantastic, wasn't it?
I think it's even on YouTube, so you can keep listening to it.
Be interesting how he tops that at a future event. But I love chatting with you today. And there's so much positivity, especially around turning challenges into opportunities in this period of uncertainty. So for people listening that want to find out a little bit more about what you're doing at Dynatrace and how you're helping businesses, can you just point them in the best direction of doing that?
Yeah, obviously going to the Dynatrace website is always a good starting point. There is also our offering for people who want to get started in this challenging time and want to understand what Dynatrace can do. We always had a free trial as every SaaS company, but we extended now how long you can use the free trial and engage with us. We are also always open to conversations, but definitely the website is best. There is also regular webinar on all of these topics where you don't just hear us talking about it, because obviously a vendor always likes to say that their products are great, but where also I take a lot from, like a lot of our customers sharing their experiences, how they implemented change and how they were adapting to this new challenging situations, pretty much like from the trenches. So our customers are very open usually in this conversation. They will talk about what's going well and what did not go so well. And that's definitely an interesting place to have these discussions. So go to dynatrace.com to learn more about what we're doing. And obviously otherwise just get in touch with us.
Well, I'll add all those links to the blog post that will accompany this episode. And one of the things that I love here is, yes, there is a lot of uncertainty and a lot of challenges out there at the moment, but you're using it to drive, or many businesses indeed are using it to drive modernization, embrace automation. But it's not about replacing people. In fact, it's about replacing repeatable tasks with value-add tasks and helping businesses get their people back. And I think that is the key message. But
one important quote again, or one impressive quote for me that I got from a customer. They said, it's for them right now, it's not about saving money, but it's ensuring that they will still be in business in half a year and a year from now. And that's what they're focusing on. Because they believe that people who save money today and don't change anything and wait for things to change will be the ones that eventually will be out of business. They say if they have the money right now, they will spend it the wisest way possible to ensure that their business continues to grow in this new situation. I think what's the key message here. Obviously, it is harder than usual times, but it's really this forward-thinking mentality that people need and not just waiting it out. I think waiting it out is the really worst thing you could do.
Such a powerful, important point there and a great one to end on. So a big thank you for taking the time to share that with me today.
Thank you.
I think the closing statement there really nailed it for me, because it's not about saving cash or replacing people. It's actually about businesses getting their people back so they can focus on value-add activities instead of firefighting or just keeping the lights on. And the elimination of tech blind spot and streamlining of the error troubleshooting process is now critical to every business. And the ability to identify the exact root cause and impact of problems wherever they occur before a support ticket is even raised should be a priority now. And keeping the lights on, everything from back-end applications, underlying cloud infrastructure and networks to mobile apps and devices, all now needs a different approach to APM. But for everyone listening, in your place of work, are you noticing a shift from that former reactive approach to a more proactive mindset? Or is there still a lot of work to be done? I'd love for you to share your stories and insights with me too. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. And you can get me on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Just look for me at Neil C. Hughes. But don't just follow. I always ask you to say a nice friendly hello, and you found me through the podcast, so I know who you are. But I'm afraid I've got to get out of here, because I've got another interview to record that will go live tomorrow. So a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.